timeout. Dad sets timer to 10 minutes and does not speak further to Jose. Jose starts kicking the baseboard, successfully annoying parent, and shouts loudly, "I hate this stupid timeout crap." Dad stops the timer and says, "Son, kicking our baseboard is not allowed. The rule is that you are quiet and still while on timeout. I will restart the timer just as soon as you stop kicking the baseboard. Son, you may take all the time you need." Begins a self-limiting timeout. Jose stops kicking the baseboard and shouts, "Okay, start the timer again." Dad. Parent says nothing, but starts the timer, which makes a noise, signaling the beginning of the original fixed timeout. Jose sits still and is quiet for the 10-minute timeout. Timer bell sounds, and the child is free to leave timeout. As soon as he is able to share with his dad a plan on ways to remember to wait his turn, he then returns to his PlayStation to wait his turn.
So basically, an example going down of keeping our cool and setting the necessary timeouts, and not talking too much and not repeating ourselves, because we know that our kids are listening to us. So it's that consistency of the fixed timeout. So can I get another volunteer, maybe on this table here, to read on page 127 aloud? Let's look at the process.
Let's look at the process. This dad gave Jose a fixed timeout, 10 minutes, for hitting his brother. While on timeout, Jose is asked to come up with a plan he will use to be successful at waiting for his turn. When Jose refused to be quiet and be still while on timeout, a self-limiting, Jose decided the time by controlling his own behavior. Timeout was started. When Jose stops kicking the baseboard, he begins his original 10-minute fixed timeout. When his 10 minutes are up, Jose tells his father of his plan and is free to go wait his turn at the PlayStation. Parent stays calm throughout the process. Asking a child to develop a plan while on timeout can be as successful in changing behavior as the consequence itself. Asking a child to develop a plan helps the child focus on his or her behavior choices, is an efficient teaching tool, assists children in problem solving, and will usually decrease the child's creative behavior. Developing his own plan helps Jose learn ways of controlling himself. Continued lectures will only slow the process of change, and for many tough kids, helps redirect them from emotional turmoil to thoughtful solutions.
All right, so where before we might have spanked or yelled or done something like that to get what we want, the behavior that we want, so what the book is telling us now is giving us a model of getting the behavior that we want without having to, in essence, kind of have long-term negative consequences. Because what we want to have is positive long-term consequences, and we also want our kids to do what we need them to do, right? We want both of those things. Sometimes in the past, it was a lot easier to just get them to do what we want them to do because they were scared of us. We spanked them, and then that would be what would motivate them. So here's just giving us a way, because a lot of people sometimes say, you know what, timeouts don't work for me, and I'm not sure if it's in this unit, but timeouts don't work for me. And if the book is suggesting that this is the way that we discipline, that's kind of counterintuitive, right? You're telling me to discipline by using timeouts. They don't work for me. It's not gonna work for me. So the trick is to learn how to work with them. So a fixed timeout is given when a house rule is broken. So if a house rule is broken, we apply a timeout, and the book suggests 1 minute for each age. A timeout could be as short as 2 minutes if we're talking about small kids, maybe 3, 4-year-old. Maybe you give them a small timeout. The idea is to cause in their brain a negative consequence of their behavior. If they don't, they say, I'm not going to listen to you, I'm not listening to you, I'm not listening to you. Then we move into the self-limiting timeout. So at that point, they're in control of time. It's not us telling them, You're not gonna get anything back until you start. You're not gonna get anything this, no, you're not gonna do anything of that. No, it's a self-limiting timeout.
Sounds just like me right now.
So we move into a self-limiting timeout, which basically means that we let them take control of the time. So as soon as you're ready to start, but remember during that time, they can't be watching TV, playing with their games. They can't be doing anything. They have to be sitting down at the table. That's it. And when they get started, so when you're ready to start the timeout, then you let me know as soon as you're ready. If they're kicking around or they're moving around, they can't be doing anything that they enjoy. Right? That's our job. We don't control them, but we do control what they enjoy. The stuff. So we've taken everything away. That's what the T-spot, take everything away for a short period of time. We want to do it for 10 minutes. They don't want to do what we're asking. They're moving around, they're doing whatever, but they can't do anything until they get ready to. Then you tell them, okay, T, as long as you need, when you're ready, we'll sit down, we'll start the clock, and then the timeout starts. And then it'll take some time. It may not happen the first time. It takes patience. So that's why it says parents stays calm throughout the process, right? That's the key. If we can stay calm throughout the process, and that takes us learning, putting our own oxygen mask first. Remember we talked about the deep breathing, learning how to take walks, take timeouts for ourselves. And then, so that's the tool they're giving us here, moving from a fixed timeout to and they don't listen to that, they're not obeying, they don't want to do what we're asked, then we move into a self-limiting timeout where they're in control of the time instead of us. So it takes some time, it takes practice. Lots of parents tells us it's not easy the first time, it's not easy to change, because I'm not only working on their behavior, I'm also working on my behavior at the same time. And so, but remember we did the whole thing where if we change one thing, it's got to change the other thing. So if we change this a little bit, calm down, have some, keep on trying the process, keep on trying this timeout thing, and then it should give a solution. It works really well. I mean, it took a while to learn how to, kind of plan consistently, and that's the key.
Okay, and then also lastly, developing the action plan. So once they do sit in their timeout, once they do wait the 10 minutes, then what do we do after? We don't just let them go. So we're developing an action plan where we're helping them focus on their behavior. Like, what was okay? Who was hurt? How do you think it made them feel? Or how do you feel? It's an effective teaching tool. It assists in problem solving. So maybe when they're at school, right, then all of a sudden they're going through this because they've been learning it at home. And then it redirects kids from emotional responses to thoughtful solutions. So then they might already know, I don't know why I do it. And then they start talking to you a little bit more about that reactivity. And then you help them a little bit more with, definitely having empathy, but teaching them too that there's other ways. You don't have to be so emotional.
So when you're on that timeout, you're asking them to think about it and to give you a written plan or something. Say, hey, think about what's the solution for this? Right? Someone said, if you come at me with a problem, also come at me with two solutions. Don't just come at me with problems, right? Because oftentimes I want to come with problems. So one line that works for me, okay, if you come with a problem, also come with two solutions. Okay, so that way we can talk about the problem and the two solutions you got for them.
And it's amazing what kids come up with.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay, I didn't think about that, or whatever it may be. So we're going to move on to page 128 with another example. So at the first table, if you don't mind reading.
Maybe we can have Mom and Stephanie. Who wants to be a mom? Who wants to be Stephanie?
You're Stephanie. Oh my God.
All right.
Fine, I'll be Stephanie.
Okay.
All right.
So start with Mom.
Stephanie, it's your turn to do the dishes.
It's not fair. I hate you. Whoa, okay. You just, Bleep. You just had kids so you could make slaves out of us.
Stephanie, it's okay to be mad. You can tell me how you feel, but swearing at me is not the answer. Take 10 minutes to calm yourself.
Goes to a fixed timeout, but continues to mutter under her breath about what rotten parents she has.
I can see that you're not ready to take your time out quietly, sweetheart. Understand that I will start the timer, your self-limiting timeout, when you show me that you're ready to be quiet. Child now controls the length of this calming down phase.
Becomes quiet after 5 minutes of mumbling.
Nods at Stephanie and starts the timer for an initial 10 minutes, though goes off after 10 minutes. Honey, your timeout is over. As soon as you're ready, the dishes are ready. You can stay in the chair as long as you need, but the first thing you need to do when you get up is the dishes.
Chooses to continue to sit in the timeout for an additional 5 minutes before going into the kitchen and beginning the dishes. When Stephanie finishes the dishes, she lets her parents know.
Looks good, Steph. Thanks for helping. You're almost finished. Should take you only a second to finish drying the pots. This mom is helping Stephanie structure her time. While mom knows Stephanie needs time for fun, mom also understands that Stephanie needs to spend time as a responsible family member, contributing to the daily household chores. Let's look at the process. Mom wants a positive behavior, help with family chore that Stephanie does not want to do. Wash the dishes. When Stephanie becomes verbally abusive, negative behavior, she receives a fixed timeout, time to calm down. While sitting in the corner, she mutters the same verbally abusive language and negative behavior. Stephanie is then given a self-limiting timeout. As soon as she stops the offensive language, that phase of the consequence is over. She then experiences the original consequence of her first negative choice, which is the 10-minute fixed timeout. After the timeout bell sounded, Stephanie put herself on a second self-limiting timeout, which ended when she left to do the dishes. Stephanie's mom remained calm and refused to argue with her daughter. Ding, ding, ding. Mom gives Stephanie a positive stroke when she completes the task.
All right, so that was the process, right? So it looks a lot easier on paper than it is actually going through it, right? Going through it, going through it. But we kind of got to we watched the video last time with Everybody Loves Raymond, if you remember that. But so this is just kind of giving us an intellectual idea of what it's going to look like. Of course, having the whole body feel calm and having to be able to communicate effectively takes a lot of work. But that's the idea. That's the process.
And I think practicing helps. I mean, I know when I'm going to stand somewhere and give a speech, or I'm going to go on an interview, sometimes I look at the mirror, to practice what I'm going to say. So the same thing, if we have a plan before we're interacting with our kids, especially our teenage kids, then they won't know what to do. If we're usually reactive, if we usually scream, and we're calm, and they can't push our buttons, as we say, what else? What other choice do they have?
What do you mean plan? Plan how?
As far as how you're talking to them.
So think
Like
about
you were
it.
saying, ding, 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 what's the one different thing here? Like, I think we all can kind of do this, but that last one where it says, Stephanie's mom remained calm and refused to argue with her daughter. So again, not only working on our child's behavior, but definitely working on our behavior and how we're gonna be at the time, no matter what they tell us.
All right, any questions about the process or ideas you guys like to share?
What if they don't work with you? Like, what if you're home for like an hour and then this happens and they sit in a 10-minute timeout? If it becomes like longer than an hour and you have to leave. And it's like, okay, we have to go.
Yeah. Well, it still continues when you come back home. I mean, the timeout continues when you come back home. We have to work around. There's no ideal. Another thing, another mom was telling us also in the morning. If the kid doesn't want to get up in the morning, but we have to get going in the morning, I can't just give him a timeout right there because we got to get going, right? There's something called natural consequences. At some point, you may have to, so that you can experience the natural consequences of not getting up and stuff like that. But at some point, you have to, if you have to go, you can't continue it now. Then when you come back home, it starts again. Then you take your time out there. So do what you can control as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. What if they prefer being on timeout to doing dishes?
In the beginning, especially if they're super strong-willed, they will. But again, who's the adult, right? Who's the one that knows that the child's brain isn't developed fully, that this is normal behavior? So yes, it's going to take some parents longer than others, and some kids that's who they are. But eventually, they do change. They do. They want to please us. We're their parents. We're the best things that they have right now. And a lot of times when we get into screaming matches or we try to force them to do stuff, it isn't a very good relationship. So then you do think like that, because right now they may be misbehaving. So you're like, I'm gonna wait 2 hours for a 10-minute timeout. I don't think so. But most likely it won't happen. That's just more us like thinking the worst case scenario. What's the best case scenario? That most likely they will do it in a decent amount of time, and then they may regress and go back because they're thinking, this is just because they're taking this class. They'll change. But it's up to us, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that if we change and go back to our old ways, this is the kind of stuff that we're facing, right? But if we do stick to our ways and we're consistent, when they face this, they're going to tell us. And then we have some say in it. right? Because they know that they can trust us and they can talk to us and we'll help them create an action plan, right?
And then you control the stuff. Ideally, the book says kids don't do what we ask them to do because they want to do it. They do what we ask them to do because they want their stuff done. So if you do have that motivation, if you can get that to, you know, to get that to motivate them, sometimes it's a little, I mean, I don't know, I mean, yeah, so that's what the book says. It's to control the stuff. If you take that away for a short period of time, ideally that will motivate them. So it's not everyone is the same, and so we're all a little different, but adapting to the program a little bit, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, trying this, trying that. We're all scientists, so you gotta see what works, try what works, and then see what works for you. Yes.
Yeah, I'm finding out what works for me is raising my voice with my kids. If they
Okay.
won't listen to me, they'll just keep playing and playing or doing what they're doing. It's time to leave. They're playing around. As soon as I raise my voice,
Mhm.
they stop.
Okay.
So that works for me.
Yeah.
But this is telling me the total opposite, that it's not good to raise your voice. It's not good to yell at. You have to do other things to discipline your
What
children.
would you, okay, there's a difference, so there's a difference between raising your voice under control and then raising your voice out of control.
Okay.
I mean, there's a difference, right? So and that all depends on me, right? A mom told us, you know, I think it's okay to spank a child. I mean, I don't think you can get it. She was okay, and I said, well, there's a difference between spanking your child and giving them a quick spank and being angry and enraged and start beating.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between raising your voice to get their attention, and there's a difference between verbal abuse. So I don't know where we're at there, you know. So the idea is that, how old are your kids?
9 and 12.
9 and 12. Okay, so it may, so the book would just suggest that, okay, if that's the way that's working now, it gets tougher when they get bigger. The problems get bigger, and sometimes they yell back at us. Not little. My 9-year-old might not yell back at me, but my 16 or 17-year-old will.
Yeah.
Right. So then I'm also teaching. It's kind of a
I know,
double-edged, life is
I
a
know.
double-edged sword. And so, and the best thing we can do about it is recognize it. That's all. Because we're not here to get judgmental. I'm not here to say. So no one's here to judgmental. We're on a safe space, right? And so the important thing to know is that as kids are learning all the time, and they learn a lot from what we say, right? But they learn a lot more from what they see. And so that's all. So so the book is saying, let's control ourselves, right? So that we teach model self-control to them, and only you really know how that feels inside, right? You're the only one to know. We know stress is bad, right? Coming from a different perspective of, well, number one perspective, I want to have a good relationship with my kid. I want to be able to get them to be successful in life, and on a different level, right? I also want to be a healthy, happy human being. Right? I want to feel good about life. Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, we can go into videos all day long. So the thing is, how do I feel when when my body starts to do that? You know, my kids aren't listening to me. You know, it's starting to bother me. My blood starts getting a little rush. You know, all of a sudden my body's, you know, okay. And when for a little while, okay, that may be all right. But imagine that over 10 years, over 20 years, over 30 years, my body feeling that. Then all of a sudden, I get some sort of diagnosis in my life, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, then my whole life changes, and then I have, well, but what caused it? You know, and then this is kind of, we're getting into a whole other realm of thing. But the thing is that we want to know is that it may be working, and that's good. We're not here to judge nobody. We're here to learn. The thing is to look at long-term effects of the way that we're doing things. My long-term effects of what we're doing. Is it working for me, really, right? It may be working for me, but is my blood pressure okay? Am I feeling okay? And then just different things to look at, different things to consider when we're parenting. It's a hard job, man, being a parent. I don't know what you guys are. My kids are older now, and they're good kids. I mean, they're good kids, but, you know, they've definitely made me learn a lot. And so I got, like I said, I got a 19-year-old and a 13-year-old, and it's not an easy job. It still continues. But the important thing that I told when we work with Claudia is ultimately what we want is get our kids to do what they want. But ultimately, don't we want happy, successful kids to have a good life and be workers and stuff like that? Ultimately, that's what we want, right? We want them to be successful human beings, to get married, have kids, and have a good life, go to work, and live this American dream, right? Okay, so that's what we want, but are we willing, sometimes we forget that, and we get so caught up in the moment, okay, but I really need them to do this right now. Okay, yeah, but how am I gonna do it? Am I gonna break their will, or break our relationship, or, you know, and all this damage that happens for this moment, not understanding I may have just caused them to feel insecure their whole life, to not be able to find a father or mate or something like that, to look for mates that are, you know, negative also. So I don't know, there's lots of ways we can go with it. So all I can say is what the book is suggesting is that we maintain calm, and I think it was Plato who said if you can be just the right amount of anger at just the right person for just the right amount of time, then you got something going. So if you can control that, then more power to you, okay? The thing is, if we can't, okay, if it elevates that control, and then if it gets out of control, and then only you know that.
Yeah.
I just remember a funny story now that Alfredo's talking. I think my son was like 10. And he would walk around, you know, in his little underwear or whatever, right? And when he passed by me, I would slap his butt. Because he was the cutest little butt, you know? So I just slap his butt. And I always used to do that. And I remember one day I was washing dishes. And then all of a sudden, I feel somebody slap my butt. And it's my son. I talked to Alfredo, and he's like, well, you slap his butt.
Yeah.
What's wrong with him slapping your butt? And I'm like, I don't appreciate that. And he's like, well, have you ever asked him? You know, so